You know what it means for someone to be awake at 3 in the morning? It's not just about insomnia. It's not just about the body refusing to rest. It's about a heart that doesn't know where to settle. There it is, in the bluish glow of the screen, holding the phone as if it's holding a secret. And you can't see it, but there's a breath held between clicks. A hidden fear behind curiosity, a waiting that doesn't want to admit it's waiting. He opens your profile, not to like, not to comment, just to measure the distance between you two. That distance that isn't on the map, but in the silence. And at 3 in the morning, the silence is louder than any notification. Have you noticed there's a difference between wanting to know and needing to know? He doesn't just want to catch up on your life. He needs to confirm if you still exist in his world, even if it's just in the little illuminated window of the app. The early morning has this strange power. It amplifies everything. It magnifies small memories, distorts intentions, makes simple gestures feel confessional. And there, in the moment he taps on your profile picture, it's like he's knocking on the door of a room where you no longer reside. He doesn't sleep. And he doesn't sleep because he knows that deep down you might notice. And if you notice, you might ask. And if you ask, you might find out. But he'll never say it's because of you. Have you ever felt that weight? The weight of being watched without being touched? Of being in an invisible showcase where a specific gaze always returns? It's almost like a secret ritual. 3 a.m., your name in the search bar, and the swipe of a finger that doesn't hesitate. There's something dangerous about the early morning. It doesn't forgive thoughts you try to postpone. It spares no questions that got stuck the day before. And for him, every time he opens your profile, it's like he's also opening a wound. He knows that if he waits to see during the day, it won't have the same impact. In the sunlight, things seem smaller, more rational, but in the darkness, everything becomes too intimate to ignore. The heart believes more in what it sees at night. You might think that's an exaggeration. Maybe you've never realized that someone could hold on to such a habit just to feel your presence. But for him, this is the only time he feels close. Close without being seen, present without permission. The curious thing is that he never interacts. He never gives explicit signs. It's as if he wants to create an invisible code. If you notice, you'll understand. If you don't notice, I'll still be here in silence. And that's where the danger lies. Because his silence isn't empty. It's full of expectations, full of hypotheses, full of stories he creates about you based solely on what he finds online. Have you ever experienced this? Feeling that someone is following you through posts and stories, but never truly gets close? If so, comment, "I needed to hear this." What he doesn't admit is that each visit is also a test to see if you still have the sensitivity to feel when you're being remembered. Because there is a type of connection that doesn't need likes, it just needs acknowledgement. And the early morning is perfect for that. While the rest of the world sleeps, he builds for himself an invisible bridge to you. But the problem is that this bridge only exists on his side, and no matter how many nights he walks on it, he doesn't know if he will find solid ground when he reaches the other side. He tries to convince himself that it's just curiosity, but the truth is, he can't fall asleep until he checks, until he confirms that you are still there, active, alive, perceptible. 3 in the morning. The clock becomes an accomplice, the silence, a partner in crime, and your image, the only answer he thinks he can bear at that moment. But each view keeps him more trapped. Every morning that passes strengthens the bond he doesn't want to break. And that's what makes it dangerous. There's nothing more addictive than the feeling of closeness that doesn't need to be explained. There's a detail that almost nobody notices. It's not just the act of opening your profile at 3 in the morning. It's the way he prepares for it. First, he turns off all the lights. He puts his phone on silent mode. He sits in the same corner of the bed, always on the same side, as if that were the exact spot from which he can feel the most. And for a few seconds, he just stares at the locked screen, breathing slowly. It's as if, in that moment, he's deciding whether or not to cross the invisible line that separates curiosity from desire. But you know what happens. He crosses. He always crosses. When your profile picture appears, something about him changes. His posture, his gaze, even the rhythm of his breathing. It doesn't matter if you've updated anything or not. The simple confirmation that your profile still exists is enough to calm a part of him. But it's a calm that doesn't last long, because soon after comes the other feeling. The one that eats away at him. The one that whispers, "What if he doesn't realize I was here?" and that thought torments him more than any insomnia. You might find it strange to imagine someone hoping to be noticed, even without leaving obvious traces. But for him, there's a kind of satisfaction in believing that you can somehow feel his presence. Not in the eyes, not in the hands, but in a deeper place. He's not just seeing what you post, he's trying to read signs. He's looking for clues that confirm what he wants to believe, that you still think about him from time to time. And if he finds a photo you've posted, he tries to decipher the context, where it was taken, who was with you, if there was a smile that wasn't there before. He creates entire narratives from a single detail. But the most unsettling thing is what happens when he doesn't find anything new, because that's when his mind starts to wander. And the imagination of someone awake at 3 in the morning is the most dangerous place there is. In this silence, each absence of a post becomes a mystery. Every subtle change in their status turns into an enigma, and with each passing night, he drifts further from the real world to live in this space he has created just for the two of them, a space only he knows. Have you ever experienced something like this? Feeling like someone is following you in the shadows, not to invade, but to remain? If so, comment. I've noticed. The truth is that the early morning creates a type of intimacy that daytime could never achieve. Not because it's more romantic or poetic, but because it's more vulnerable. And vulnerability is the raw material of the most dangerous connections. He doesn't want to admit he's trapped in this. He doesn't want to acknowledge that with each passing night, he needs this ritual more to feel close. And when he realizes it, it's already too late. Because repetition turns habit into necessity, and necessity becomes addiction. He doesn't think about tomorrow while scrolling through the screen. He doesn't think about losing hours of sleep, productivity, or peace. The only thought is, do you know? And that's enough to keep him awake. Sometimes he closes the app, tries to sleep, but he can't handle it. He goes back, opens it again, looks once more, as if something might have changed in the last few minutes. And even if nothing has changed, the simple act of looking again calms an anxiety he can't explain. But deep down he knows it's not about novelty. It's about presence. It's about keeping a flame alive that he fears will go out. And the early morning is the only time this flame feels safe, protected from the world's interference. He never says it aloud, but there's a secret expectation that keeps him awake. It's as if each dawn is an invisible testing ground. A test to see how far he can go without exposing himself. You might even think it's just curiosity, but curiosity doesn't create such precise rituals. It doesn't pick specific times. It doesn't maintain a silent standard for so long. This is something else. He already knows exactly how many seconds it takes to open his profile. He knows the automatic path his finger takes on the screen, and at the moment the image appears, something inside him relaxes, like someone finding a point of reference in the middle of a desert. But relaxing doesn't mean being at peace, because along with relief comes the weight of the absence of response. He looks at the photo and wonders, do you feel that it was me? This question echoes like a silent prayer, not a prayer to change fate, but to be recognized, because deep down he doesn't want to go unnoticed. He wants you to notice. He wants you to understand without words that there's someone thinking of you while the rest of the world sleeps. And the early morning is cruel in that sense. It not only reveals loneliness, but also amplifies the space where the mind can create ghosts. He starts to imagine that maybe you are awake too, maybe at that very moment, looking at something of his. And that possibility is enough to quicken his heart. When he finds an old post of yours, he doesn't just see it. He goes back to the day it was published. He tries to remember if, at that moment, you were talking, exchanging messages, if there was some kind of more vibrant connection. He relives conversations in his head, as if he were rewinding a movie he never wanted to end. But the problem with rewinding is that the more he goes back, the more he realizes that the present is not the same as the past. And that hurts. It hurts in a silent way, that doesn't make noise but keeps him from sleeping. He thinks about sending a message. Sometimes he even types one out, but he deletes it before sending, because he knows that if he does that, he breaks the bubble of the early morning, and the bubble is all he has. Have you ever wondered why some people prefer to observe from a distance instead of getting closer? Often it's not a lack of courage, it's the fear of discovering that the closeness they imagine doesn't exist outside of their own mind. And he knows that. He knows that if he crosses the line and makes contact, he risks realizing that the invisible bridge he built only works one way. So he prefers to maintain the ritual even if it hurts, because it hurts less than the possibility of losing the little he still feels as a connection. Sometimes he tries to distract himself. He opens another app, watches random videos, but he always comes back, always, as if there's a magnetic force between the touch of his finger and the image of her profile. And every time he returns, he reinforces the same lie to himself. Just today. Tomorrow I won't do it. But tomorrow never keeps that promise. He lives in this cycle night after night, without realizing that he is feeding something that is growing, something that sooner or later will demand a price. And deep down he already feels the beginning of that demand. Not in his body, not in physical exhaustion, but in the way he starts to rely on this silent presence to feel less empty. The greater danger is not what he sees, it's what he begins to believe he sees. When you post something vague, a loose phrase, a blurry photo, he doesn't just see what's in front of him. He projects, interprets it as if it were a secret code, as if each word had been chosen to cross the screen and reach only his perception. And the most curious thing is that he doesn't question this feeling. He accepts it as truth, as if the universe had placed a sign there for him to read. And once he believes it, there's no turning back. 3 in the morning is fertile ground for illusions. A tired body, a hyperactive mind, absolute silence. All of this creates a perfect scenario for small things to seem enormous. An emoji turns into a declaration. A silence becomes a provocation. An old photo reposted turns into an indirect message. He doesn't tell anyone this. He doesn't share because he knows that in the eyes of anyone else it would seem like an exaggeration. But in the world he built, everything makes sense. And that's where obsession disguises itself as routine, because on the surface there's nothing unusual about opening someone's profile. But at its core, what drives him isn't curiosity, it's need. And that need blinds him to the fact that he's starting to read intentions that may have never existed. Have you noticed how the mind can, when it wants, build bridges between points that never intersected? He lives in that space, in that invisible thread that links two ends, even if one of them exists only in imagination. And each passing night reinforces the belief that you know, that you feel, that you deliberately leave certain things public, perhaps to test, perhaps to respond, without actually responding. This idea is dangerous because it turns any gesture of yours into confirmation. And confirmations, even false ones, feed the need. He starts looking for patterns, counts how many days pass between each post, observes if there's a change in the times you appear online. Even the type of photo you choose seems to him like a clue. But all of this happens only in the early hours of the morning. During the day, he wears the mask of normalcy. He talks to other people, pretends to be interested in other topics, but he carries in his pocket the internal clock that's already ticking down to the next visit. And when the hand approaches 3 o'clock, it's as if something inside him awakens. A silent call. An impulse that doesn't question. He grabs his phone and repeats the ritual. The repetition creates a dangerous familiarity, because when something becomes part of the routine, it stops seeming extreme. And that's precisely where he loses track of what's healthy. Have you experienced something similar? To realize that a silent habit started small but grew without you noticing? If so, comment. I've been through that. He still believes he has control, that if he wanted to, he could stop. But deep down, he knows he doesn't want to stop, because stopping would mean confronting the emptiness where your digital presence currently resides. There's a line he never wanted to cross, the line that separates dawn from day. But there comes a moment when that line fades on its own. Suddenly, it's no longer just at 3 in the morning. He starts checking in the middle of the afternoon, during work breaks, on the way home, as if he needed small doses to keep from losing the effect. The ritual loses its exclusivity but gains frequency. And with that, his presence in your life, though invisible, becomes constant, not because you see him, but because he refuses to leave the space he has carved out in his own mind. And that's when something changes. He no longer just seeks to confirm that you're there. Now he starts to anticipate, to wait, to notice even before you post, as if he has a sixth sense. His perception sharpens in a strange way. He becomes sensitive to small details. A color change in the feed, a story that lasts a few seconds less, a comment you leave somewhere else. Each fragment turns into a chapter. But the problem with seeing too much is that at some point you start to see what isn't there, and he can't distinguish anymore. The line between reality and interpretation blurs. The most unsettling part is that, even while noticing this distortion, he doesn't pull back. He knows he's reading signals that might not be real, but he prefers to believe, because believing is more comfortable than accepting that there are no hidden messages. Until one night, he catches himself wondering what would happen if you blocked him. And just the thought triggers a physical emptiness, a chill that runs through his body, as if someone had turned off the only light on in the room. He realizes that if that were to happen, it wouldn't just be about losing access to an account. It would be about losing the last thread that still connects him to something that no longer exists, or perhaps never existed outside his late-night thoughts. And for a moment, he considers stopping, breaking the cycle before it breaks on its own. But he can't, because there's no addiction harder to shake off than the one that feeds on hope. The hope that someday you'll notice. That you'll see, recognize, and maybe even respond, even if it's just a silent glance through the screen. Deep down, he knows he's walking on thin ice. Each dawn is a step closer to the moment when something's going to give. Either he'll expose himself, or you'll shut the door, and still he carries on, because at 3 in the morning, logic has no power. Only the feeling exists. And that feeling to him is worth more than any caution. Maybe you'll never know how much you were watched. Maybe you'll never realize how much your silence was interpreted. Or maybe you already do, and choose not to react. But if one day in the middle of the night, you feel a strange urge to open your phone for no reason, to check something you hadn't planned, to look at a screen as if someone had just passed by, maybe it's him. Maybe he's still on the other side, in the same spot on the bed, holding the phone, waiting for you to feel. Because in the end, all the rituals, all the waiting, all the insomnia, it all comes down to this, not being forgotten. And as long as the night exists, he will keep coming back, returning to the same place, at the same hour, with the same silent hope of being noticed. If this resonated with you, the next video will resonate even more. Click here and continue with me. You've seen the routine. Now come see the origin.